Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. My name is DJ Wooldridge, and with me today is Roxy Stryer to talk about WandaVision Episode 9, the series finale. That is the title of the episode and also what it is. The events of WandaVision come to a head, and the destinies of all who took part are determined. This episode was directed by Matt Shakman, who directed all the other episodes, and was written by Jack Schaefer, who is also the showrunner of this show. So let's get into it. Let's sneak on in. A majority of this episode is basically a battle between Wanda and Agatha and Vision and Vision. I liked in the credits, it's like Paul Bettany plays Vision and the Vision. So I think a lot of where the meat is the battle between Wanda and Agatha. We find out that Agatha wants to absorb Wanda's powers. She says that's her thing. Good thing to find out in the finale. Agatha releases the residents of Westview at a certain point, and they all torment Wanda with the waking nightmare that Wanda has put them in. The book that we saw 2 episodes ago now was in fact the Darkhold. Agatha refers to it as the Darkhold. Once again, just emphasizing that the events of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. do not matter and do not connect to the wider MCU, because this Darkhold does not look like the other Darkhold. And apparently Wanda was prophesied to be more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, a.k.a. Doctor Strange. Is Doctor Strange the Sorcerer Supreme at this point? That happened at the end of his movie? Cool. He does not show up in this, despite literally every piece of speculation anybody had about this this show. None of it came out. None of it panned out.
No. A lot of boners did come in this episode instead, though.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Yeah. So just general thoughts, DJ.
Yes.
I'm going to start with this.
Please.
I have had to do a little bit of self-love and care with this series because I love this character so much, and my entitlement is real on this one. Yeah. And I've kind of needed to check that a little bit, because after the finale, what I have determined is what I wanted to happen in this show did not happen.
Yes.
And what I was hoping the show was not what the show was. Which doesn't mean that it wasn't for a lot of other people.
That's true.
And I'm stoked for those people. It does seem like this is a very loved show. And there were elements of this episode that I thought were ridiculously strong, and elements of this season that I thought were really strong, primarily the relationship between Wanda and Vision, which carried the entire show for me. And as I describe myself as a lover of love, a shipper of ships, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen's chemistry is undeniable. Yeah. And so that really worked. The MCU stuff, which is just what I'm describing as anything that isn't the sitcom aspect or the mystery aspect or the love life aspect, the superhero-y stuff. Yeah.
Anytime we go to Sword, a good chunk of this finale, which is, we talked about a little bit before we went on air, is traditional good guy fights bad guy with same powers.
That was not what I would have liked to see. Yeah. So I'm having to really question myself and think, just because it's not what you wanted, was it good? Did it accomplish what it was trying to do? Not what you wanted it to do. Did it accomplish its goals? And after the finale episode, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. I'm not sure if it accomplished what it was hoping to accomplish.
I think that's really fair. And I think that, the idea of, because I think that's a struggle for literally everybody, for most things, especially if something you feel really attached to is your what you want. And I think when you distance yourself from that and asking about, did this show accomplish what it wanted to accomplish on its own terms, I think that's a really fair question, because after watching this finale, to put it in other terms, like, what did we learn here? Like, what, because I know a lot of people have given a lot of static to certain critics, literally reacting to the headlines of like, WandaVision's like an extended movie, or WandaVision's da-da-da-da-da, and people pushing back on that. But I do think there's an element where I don't know that what these 9 episodes did could not have also been accomplished probably more efficiently in a 2-hour run time. So
Yeah.
I think the question I have for you is that, like, what did we learn? I don't, like, if you look at like the Hulk, right? The Hulk is a similar situation. He has these abilities that are incredible that he cannot control. And typically the Hulk arc is he learns to love the Hulk inside of him or something. I don't know how did Wanda grow or change as a character?
Okay.
What did she learn? I don't know what
I
what
know.
we're supposed to get out of this show.
So what I think this was a show about acceptance of loss and grief. And I think that and it might not have done this for you, but what I think the goal was, and I do think it partially did accomplish this, and I could be wrong, is as, by the way, just pretend after everything I say today, I could be wrong is just inserted there. It's all an opinion, and I could be wrong.
Exactly, and also, what might have not worked for us might have worked for other people. So I don't know if there is like a wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. So what I think they were trying to accomplish was that Wanda is a woman who was so blinded by her loss and grief that she lost who she was. She did something that caused conflict for other people and grief for other people. She didn't even know she was doing that because she was so self-involved in trying to take care of herself, her family, her love, her needs, that she was blinded to the hurt of other people. And then by the end of this, it was about making that choice to sacrifice her wants, her needs, her desires, to give up her family, at least for now, in order to allow everybody else to live a life. And that acceptance, I don't know this for a fact right now, but I believe is the final stage of grief.
I do not know.
I think there's the 7 stages of grief, and I believe that acceptance is the final one.
That sounds right. I'm going to look it up right now. I think
we watched her go through anger and sadness and, you know, all of the other stages of grief. And I think we ended on acceptance, which is why she makes the decision she finally did. And she does seem at peace in that final scene with Paul Bettany as we're watching him disappear. And he's talked about all of those stages that he's gone through, all the phases he's gone through, and how hopefully there will be a hello again in the future. And I think that in this show, not this show, in this universe will probably look like we see Vision again. But for most of us, what that looks like is an afterlife or in the earth or whatever it is that you believe. So we'll see you again in the future could look different. So I think this show is really about grief and acceptance and overcoming. And some of that worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good explanation. And I'm glad Wanda found her peace after ruining the lives of an entire town.
Yeah, I did like, though, DJ, that at least if she did that, she was not as aware as I was hoping she would not be abundantly aware of the turmoil she was causing in these other people.
Yes.
Because then she's really not Wanda. If she knew that she was giving them the nightmares, all the sitcom stuff made more sense after this episode, because while she's feeling no grief and she's feeling all of this, those feelings have to go somewhere. Yeah. And the fact that went on to other people and she was able to la-di-da-di-da, but Dottie's not able to function. All of that kind of made sense for me. So I did appreciate that they didn't make Wanda a self-aware, sabotaging, for lack of better words, bully. Yeah. She was not that. And I would like to think that her character at this point would have been more aware, but I'm glad that she wasn't, because then I would have liked her less.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, while Wanda is facing Agatha, Vision is literally facing himself, facing the white Vision that we saw in the end of the previous episode. We get some creative use of their powers as they're fighting, which all culminates to... I believe the best way to describe it is a thought experiment. Vision just talking about the thought experiment of the ship of Theseus. And literally, I guess, unlocking actually, yeah, your memories are still in there somewhere. Tap, tap, tap. And the white Vision gets those memories. So there's still and he just flies off. So there still is a Vision around. I would imagine that I did like that this Vision didn't just fuse with that Vision. So we're just like, cool, no consequences. Vision's back and A-okay. Like, even though this Vision has the memories, he's not going to be the same, which I think is interesting.
It was, I did not prefer the choice that he was gone. I would have liked to see, where'd you go? What's happening with you?
He's in a cabin on the other side of the world, figuring his stuff out.
So I wish that had this not been the finale, I would have liked to see a little more with that. But at the same time, I liked the Vision stuff. I liked watching Vision v. Vision was cool at first. It was just a little bit badass. And so while the MCU stuff wasn't always my favorite, I was like, this is cool to watch for a little bit. I also like, because I'm a hippy dippy stoner kid, I like questioning what makes a person a person.
Yeah.
Is it their mind, their body, their soul? Is it their memories? Is it what makes somebody somebody?
Yeah.
And this conflict of us having to call him Vision because that is Vision, White Vision is Vision.
Yeah.
But then us knowing that other Vision is Vision, and which one do we feel like is more Vision? Is it the body? Is it the memories? Is it Wanda's creation? What makes somebody somebody? So the part of me that's very philosophical and likes having these hours long debates of what makes somebody who they are.
Yeah.
That part of me last night was like, I can have some fun with this for hours later.
Yeah.
I'm really going to put some thought into this. So that was cool, even though we didn't get to see the payoff of it much.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think this engaged me more because it was something, it was just, I think it was just a little bit more engaging than like, who can shoot the CG lasers the hardest? Also what exactly is happening in the battle between Wanda and Agatha is a little bit unclear. It's like, we know she's trying to absorb the powers, and then Wanda does the thing, well, take all the powers, but then it doesn't. Anyway, none of that matters.
Then she sets up the
hex things.
Yeah.
Which, God bless people in movies for their ability to look at a thing once and being like, aha, I'll be able to use that later, because I'm done. Anytime, it's like the same thing when you're watching a show or a movie and somebody just verbally, like, you're just going to want to go straight here and then turn left and then turn right over, and the person's like, gotcha. And then they get to the place, I'm like, nope, not me.
Yeah.
I'd be lost for the rest of the movie.
The Wanda versus Agatha battle was not my favorite part of this episode, including the going back to see the witches, or awakening the witches and then having them turn on Wanda. It is an interesting concept that although Wanda is more powerful, she's less knowledgeable on how to use her power. Yeah. So that's interesting. That's why Agatha wants it so bad. But at the same time, maybe I'm just super spoiled and being nitpicky, but I didn't think this looked as cool as I was hoping it would look. It looked more TV budgety than I was expecting.
Yeah, I agree. There's specifically the scene where Agatha, poor Catherine Hahn, is like getting her power sucked out and doing this. Is like, this is CW.
Yeah, all of a sudden it felt like one of our CW shows, and I was like, okay, I am used to this, but I wasn't expecting this here.
Yeah.
So that, and then also, at no point did I really feel threat or risk, because we know this is the series finale, and I didn't think that Agatha was going to end up with Wanda's powers and Wanda was going to stay in this town. So the stakes were not too high for me here. So I kind of was just sitting there when these parts were on. I was kind of just sitting there waiting for them to be passed, even though these two actresses are both A+ phenomenal and I could watch them do anything. Yeah. Just storyline wise, this part of the episode to me was kind of like, okay, I guess you have to do this because of the story you set up, but I do not prefer this. Yeah,
and I think there's room to say, and I think other people would have felt differently, but I think I would have been more engaged if Wanda and Agatha had their own Ship of Theseus-esque debate over, it's interesting because the show seems to clearly come on the side of Agatha is bad, to the point that when we get a first flashback with her, she murders a bunch of people. However, she does make solid point. Like, Wanda is like a little kid running around with a bazooka. Like, maybe this isn't great. You know what I mean? Like, and so maybe if we took the pedal off the foot off the gas a little bit and allowed Agatha to be more, not necessarily be an antagonist, but not necessarily a villain, and have them have to debate the nature of what they're doing, I think I would have been more interested. I think most of the rest of the audience, this is what they want. And so there you go.
I agree with you completely, because did you feel like you had a grasp on, so we knew Agatha wanted Wanda's powers.
Yes.
And we knew in return she said she would keep Westview. She would keep Westview exactly how it was, so that Wanda could live this life there. Did you understand what she wanted the powers to do?
No, and I do think that this is a kind of an inherent flaw that comes with. I'm starting to feel like, having watched a lot of TV, that and movies, honestly, we're over prioritizing reveals and mysteries that people can talk about on Twitter the next day, because I think it robs a lot of characterization, because motivation. I don't know what Agatha wants, why she wants it. I don't know, because you could look at that. I think that the flashback scene is supposed to function to let us know Agatha's bad, except those people are trying to murder her. So it wouldn't take a lot for you to say that actually she was the good guy in this. And then also, and this is kind of something that nags at me when superhero media tends to do this a lot, where you try to acknowledge a real thing. So like when Agatha's like, the pitchforks always come out with women like us. Yeah, but the first time we saw you was a bunch of other women with your same powers trying to murder you. So how does that work with your little metaphor you got going on? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally. I wish I just had any grasp on her plan.
Yeah.
Because if I did, I think then the stakes would have been higher, or would have been more invested. But instead, I'm being told this is the bad guy. I'm not clear why this is the bad guy, because in the world that we are in, Wanda's the bad guy. All the people think she's the bad guy. Mm-hmm. She's only looking out for herself and her family. And I'm not saying it's not motivated or understandable why she's doing it, but I am not clear on why Agatha, other than the fact that she speaks like a witch, mm-hmm. and looks like a witch, what she wants at the end of the day, and why we're supposed to believe that she is like truly evil.
Yes, I agree with that. I also think this ties into something I was going to drop later, but I think fits here. Why, speaking of our antagonist, why is Hayward arrested exactly? What did he do that the U.S. government in this scenario would be like, you get to go to jail? Meanwhile, so Agatha gets locked into a hell state of being the neighbor she was, because she tried to take Wanda's powers away. She didn't actively hurt anybody in this story or scenario. Hayward also tried to stop Wanda from abducting entire town. Don't get me wrong, I'm not on the side of the Haywards of the world and any of that
stuff. You get arrested for lying. This is Pinocchio. His nose is large.
Pinocchio rules. What happened. He lied. He said Wanda stole Vision's body, mm-hmm. And she didn't. And so he gets arrested, and Wanda, who abducted an entire town, trapped them in a hell state of her own nightmares for weeks, just gets to be like, bye, everybody, I'm out. And leaves with her nuclear, like her world-ending abilities. Nobody's like, Monica is not even like, hey, check in with what's left of the Avengers. Like, we go to a Doctor Strange, maybe. I don't know. Do something. You need to be. Wanda should be held accountable some way.
Yeah, I am glad though. At the very least, that the town is not a bunch of Monicas who are like, we get what you just did. No worries. At the very least, the town effing hates her. They're afraid of her, and so they're not speaking out, but they hate her. Yeah. And you feel the resentment and the anger and the sadness in them. And when she finally does that final walk through town, which is the ultimate moment of shame and horror for her, because she's seeing what she's done to these people. I was like, okay, at least it's not everybody in there doing what Monica did, which is just like, I relate to you. Mm-hmm. I get it. No worries, girlfriend. Yeah. Which is like, what?
Yeah, and it's weird though that's the note we end on though, is that so the whole town hates her, and Monica's like, they just don't get it. And it's like, I kind of think you don't get it. Like,
you have Stockholm syndrome, my dude.
Speaking of Monica, she gets the big reveal of who the Quicksilver is in this universe, and it is a gentleman by the name of Ralph. Boner. I think we see a headshot of him. I would imagine if he went to an audition, it would be Ralph Bonner is probably how he would ask them to pronounce it. But we don't get that here. We just know it's Ralph Boner. And
DJ, just to be abundantly clear, they used the entire Quicksilver Evan Peters thing, at least to the best of our knowledge at this point, to make a dick joke. Yes, that is what happened.
That is what happened. But I think it circles back to they couldn't get back, what's his name? Aaron Taylor Johnson. I think that's two things now.
They couldn't or they didn't want to.
They couldn't or they didn't want to, because maybe they didn't want to. Also, I now feel like the engineer, they had a reveal plan for the engineer, and John Krasinski didn't sign the contract to be Mr. Fantastic, and so then they just didn't do it.
This was, to me, if not top 3, I think this was number 1 biggest of the episode.
The Ralph Boner.
yeah, because you're making fun of us.
Mm-hmm.
We're really invested. We're really committed. We've been trying really hard to discover what is going on with Evan Peters. Does this mean that the X-Men are what's happening here? Is this a merger? What's the future? And you know that's how we feel. And you literally dicked around with us.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like being a fan of something and having its creators be like, joke's on you.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel nice to me.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not going to sit here and like, oh, why did they make a dick joke? I would like to hope that this is not the end of this and that there's something more going on here. In the same way that we thought that Agatha, when she's driving in the car, that she's not really Agnes is driving. It's not really Agatha because she pretends whatever. And then the reveal later is that Agatha knows everything. Agatha explains it all. Agatha.
Yeah. It was Agatha all along. And apparently she could have just stopped it. She could have just stopped the whole thing.
I think there might be more to this. I hope, because if this is it doesn't feel very nice of them to do.
And literally, we all know that Wanda next is going to be in the multiverse of madness. So why bother bringing Evan Peters back if it's not going to be some connection to?
And it's not even just that, because yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, if it's going to be some dude, for them to make a boner joke, like it's like they just really, really were like, F you guys.
Yeah.
And your theories.
Yeah. Yeah. And we will never know who the engineer was supposed to be. If anything. If anything.
I know that you're brushing that off, but can we talk about that for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
What do you think happened there?
I honestly think that there was a big reveal planned. Again, as this stuff goes on, I think a lot of my issues with the MCU are baked into the massive undertaking that it is. Essentially, the impression I get is that Kevin Feige is the showrunner of multiple movies and shows. I would imagine most, if not all, things have to pass through him, because so many things are. It's the same reason why is Spider-Man's costume in Civil War completely CG. They had another costume. It needed to be approved by 15 billion different people, and so they changed it last minute. And so it was CG. You know what I mean? So with this, I would imagine it was going to be something like Reed Richards. They were trying to get the stuff sorted out. They were down to the wire because they've been able to pull stuff off down to the wire and like insert something last minute. So I imagine this was something like we're negotiating. It might be last minute. We're going to like maybe an after credit scene in this, maybe something. Well, here's their guy. Now there'll be a casting announcement. And then a week later, at the end of the week, he would have shown up in WandaVision, and it didn't happen. So now we have the build up and no payoff. And I think,
but don't you think they could have just taken those parts out?
It depends on how down to the wire it got. And I do think now this unfortunately, watching WandaVision does leave me concerned for the rest of the MCU going forward, because during the Investor Day, they announced like 2,000 new shows on top of the movies they're doing.
You're underselling.
Yeah.
It was like 4,000.
Yeah, it was so many shows, and it's like, oh, this is where we might start seeing, because it's more than one person can reasonably manage. This is where the cracks start to show, and this is where stuff starts to not like congeal in a certain way. And so I don't know. But that is my opinion. It was going to be a reveal, and then it fell through. And then what we just saw was the vestigial limb or whatever, the phantom limb of what was supposed to be a big moment. And what's wild to me, though, is that you think about granted, Game of Thrones had people speculating for 8 seasons. This had people speculating for a season. So the buildup was a little bit different. But I'm surprised that there's little to no backlash on that. Like between Ralph Bohner and the engineer and No Mephisto and none of this stuff, like I'm surprised that this is normally the stuff that fans really get up in arms about, and like nothing. As far as I can see, I have not seen any backlash from the fan community.
I'm seeing a lot.
Oh, okay.
I'm seeing a lot on Twitter of people who really liked the show and are still saying they liked it. But number one, I went back and found the original. I was watching our friend Dan Merle on YouTube, who was reviewing this, talking about the Elizabeth Olsen. There's going to be a Luke Skywalker level cameo. And what Dan informed me, and then I went back to confirm, was that Elizabeth Olsen absolutely never said that.
Cool.
She was asked if there were any characters that she thought, or any actors that had not been leaked. And she said, yes. And I'm so excited for you to see them. And then that article, I think it was TV Line, headlined it, "Will there be a Luke Skywalker level cameo? ? Elizabeth Olsen reveals." And then every publication took that. And clearly what she was talking about was this was before Evan Peters was announced. The interview was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the words Luke Skywalker never came out of her mouth. Massive reveal never came out. So shame on us.
Yeah.
Because we did that. Because I don't know if this was for you, DJ, but every article I read said that she said that.
Yes.
I mean, like, so many publications picked that up. And we talked about it here. I talked about it on my show. There's going to be a Luke Skywalker level cameo. I talked about it casually with friends, but who do you think the cameo is going to be? And people predicting whether that was going to be Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or Mephisto, or who could it be? Reed Richards, who's the Luke Skywalker? Who's the Luke Skywalker? And shame on us, because I do think that part of the reason people's expectations were set so high for this was based off of shit that we did.
Yeah.
And so that's a bummer. So so a lot of people on Twitter being like, Elizabeth Olsen's a liar. How could she claim there was a Luke Skywalker level cameo? So people were mad about that, which I feel very bad for her about because she did not. So that, and then on top of that, people were mad about the engineer thing. People were mad about the Evan Peters thing.
Yeah. I will say
disappointed more than mad, I think, actually.
Yeah. And I do think there's, this one I was not as dialed in it. I know people talked about Paul Bettany, like saying, I got to work with an actor I've wanted to work with for 30 years. And now people are saying that it was a joke. He was talking about himself, which is legitimately funny if that was the case. So I'm glad you brought up the Elizabeth Olsen, Luke Skywalker thing, because not only shame on us, but also it's a good example of how things get misinterpreted. It's basically a massive global game of telephone.
Yeah.
I will say shame on us for that. The engineer thing and the Evan Peters thing.
Shame on them.
Is on that, because the language they use for the engineer, like when she first mentioned the engineer, it's like that could mean nothing, and people started speculating, and that's normal. The fact that they went back the next episode and he's like, he's on the ridge. And you know what I'm surprised is, even if they didn't get the sign off, is at least film like a joke one, like get in a celebrity to do a joke one and be like, oh, okay, that's a good, at least try and Ralph Bohner it.
There were so many options because they left it so vague. The only specification was that it was a man.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, call Matt Damon and beg him.
Yeah.
Like, do whatever.
And have him be it's like, yeah, man, there was this one time I got sucked up and I was in a play on Rag. You know what I mean? Like anything.
There's so many things. There's so many things that you could do that it was just like, why did you do that?
No.
Why? And by that I mean nothing.
No, literally nothing. Literally don't even. He doesn't even show up. And it might get a shout out later. We'll talk a little bit about Monica's fate later. At the climax of Wanda's confrontation with Agatha, she becomes the full Scarlet Witch, which again I guess is some prophesied great. Always a little nervous when we start throwing out prophecies. Those don't always work out well narratively. Gotta say, my favorite part of the episode, Wanda's new costume is dope. I don't know if we needed 9 episodes to get there, but it was really awesome. Great. Incredible. Like, I did not care. Like, okay, because again, I don't necessarily care if something is quote unquote comics accurate. So I didn't need her to have the tiara or anything. But wow, cool, really cool costume.
Yeah, it looked awesome, and whoever did her hair, I need as my new stylist.
Great.
She got that beach wave down, though.
Yeah.
She did. She looked really, really great, which I needed after this was my least favorite looking episode.
Yeah, but at least we nailed the costume. Really rad. Like we mentioned, Wanda imprisons Agatha. Then Wanda murders her children in their beds, and then Wanda and Vision say goodbye again. Obviously, I guess the kids are a facsimile. It's weird that she just created kids. She can't bring people back from the dead, but she can just whole cloth invent children.
But DJ, they chose her.
So, obviously we already talked about how Wanda just pieces out from Westview, doesn't apologize to anybody, just leaves. And in the mid-credit scene, Monica I didn't know about you, Rox, but I'm like, okay, is this our engineer moment? Monica gets taken to
DJ, I thought that, because of course.
Yeah. She gets taken to asked to go in a theater. And this was I watched this with my wife, and my wife was very much like, wait, what is happening right now? It was not smooth when they were like, there's a meeting going on. There's a meeting in the theater. We need you in the theater, in the meeting that's in the theater. Yeah. And then the lady becomes a Skrull, which if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, was a little disorienting. And then she's very vague about like, he wants you. I'm like, wow, you need to be able to pull the deep cuts on this one to know what is happening in this scene.
Are you thinking Nick Fury?
Yes. It has to be, right? And this is where I think Vision will show up next, because I think not the last time we saw Monica in the comics, but one of the most recent times we saw Monica in the comics, she was part of a team called the Ultimates, which was dealing with threats bigger than the Avengers could face, like in space. And Vision's not a part of that team, but I could very much see this version of Vision showing up in something like, obviously we don't know what the next quote unquote team movie is, whether it's a new Avengers, whether it's the Ultimates, whether it's whatever, but it feels like the impression I got is that the next Captain Marvel movie will be primarily space set. Monica will show up in that. Nick Fury will be in that. And then it'll be setting up some sort of Ultimates type team. We get a post-credit scene as well. Because I was still looking for our Luke Skywalker camera. I was like, here it is.
No, Doctor Strange is for sure, without a doubt, going to appear in the post-credit scene. In my mind, I was like, this is now the Doctor Strange scene.
Yes.
We are entering into the Doctor Strange scene.
So we go to a cabin deep in the woods, in the mountains. And we see Wanda on the porch. We follow her into the cabin. We go past this Wanda in the cabin. And then there's another Wanda.
Astral projection Wanda.
Astral projection, unless the one getting the tea is the astral projection. She's reading the Darkhold. Apparently, which made me feel like, oh, we've learned nothing on this show. We've learned nothing. And she hears the voice of her children asking for help. What
is your understanding of when we are watching Westview close in on them? What is your understanding of where her children end up?
Because earlier when she opens up the hex to let the residents out, because apparently all the residents were in that park or whatever it was. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, that one area.
They all say that their kids are at home. They definitely didn't have time to get their kids. They for sure left them in their rooms.
Sure did not. we see Vision and the kids start to come apart in similar ways. So my interpretation of things is that, which also this leads to the question of what was the point of for the children in episode 2. I swear to God, I really want to give this show the benefit of a doubt, but having watched all of the episodes, I really feel like they were just making it up episode to episode. Because
possibly, but stay with me on this one.
Yeah, sorry.
Understand? No.
Yeah, so the kids don't exist. The kids are an imagined version of what she'd like to have with kids, and we might find out that she pulled that knowledge from the multiverse or something. If she's supposed to find versions of her kids.
So if that is the case,
yes,
then what is your understanding of who is asking her for help?
That's a great question, Roxy. That's a great question. Unless, oh my God, unless Doctor Strange deals with Mephisto and they're in hell. I don't know. I don't know if they try to incorporate that part from the comics.
It definitely left me, the mid-credit and post-credit scene definitely left me with more questions than answers. And I can't help but think, if her kids don't exist, who's talking to her? Is it herself being warned by herself in the voice of her children?
Weird.
Is it that her children do exist? And if they do, who else exists? And is that a Mephisto thing? Is that a Mind Stone thing? The way that Vision is? Mm-hmm. Where are they?
And which then
so many questions.
That makes me think: why not have the big reveal with Evan Peters be like Agatha pulled him from someplace in the multiverse? We introduce the multiverse idea so that at the end, maybe it's Wanda and this new Pietro who is her brother but is also not her brother. And she's trying to find her kids in the multiverse, and now we set up. I don't know. It feels like missed opportunities. That I don't know. But I feel similar to you that these, instead of feeling like, normally I'm used to these post-credit scenes making me feel like, oh, cool, and this was more like, what's happening?
Yeah. And when the second you take to Twitter to be like, I wonder if somebody else understood something that I didn't understand about these children. Mm-hmm. Because from what I just watched, they just disappeared. Because were they ever even really here?
Do they have feelings? Should I feel sad about them leaving? What does that mean about when they say, Wanda, what you sacrificed? Well, if they weren't real, then it's on her, not on the townspeople.
When Hayward goes to shoot them, I certainly feel bad. Mm-hmm. So that means I do. Should I not feel bad that he goes to shoot them? Because if they just disappear anyway because they never existed, it doesn't even matter that he's shooting imaginary kids.
Yes, I really appreciate, even though looking back at the show, I feel even more confident than I did before that there's genuine structural issues to this show as a show. And I think those were evident at the beginning. That said, I do appreciate, even though this ended in a pretty standard MCU fashion, I do appreciate the effort that went into integrating into the series stuff that was more daring than we've seen in the MCU. I appreciate I think the word I want to use is the fidelity, the attention to detail used to bring those sitcoms to life. And like you said, I do think that, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen really brought more to this show than I think was on the page. And I'm excited to see where Wanda goes next.
I am with you. I liked this show enough. I hope that they learn lessons from it. I think I need longer to sit with this to know, again, pretty much where I started with this, which is, am I annoyed because it's not what I want, or am I annoyed because it didn't work? At least they didn't go full blown crazy woman, only crazy woman, stay crazy woman, big bad crazy woman at the end. Wanda is evil next villain. Mm-hmm. So thank you for preserving my favorite character, at least that. And I think that this will have some rewatchability. And I did enjoy my time here. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So thank you everybody for, joining us on this journey. I know the commenters have typically disagreed with us on our opinions on it, but I do appreciate you going on this journey with us. Let us know what you thought about the show, where you think we might see Wanda and Monica and the rest of the group next. Please like, please subscribe, please share. If you want to hear our full unedited discussion or see our full The OSA show, you can do that at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. And we will be back for Falcon and I was going to say Falcon versus Winter Soldier. That's not what that show is. Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I get why you think that though.
And so stay tuned for that because it'll probably be pretty different than WandaVision. So we'll see y'all then. Bye everybody.